Okay, we have a large number of people joining the meeting as we start off. That will continue. Looking at my numbers here. So I will basically first, for those already joining us, first welcome you to the Queen Anne Community Council Public Safety Committee meeting for this month. We have these not every month, but on a regular basis covering the topics that are facing our community from a public safety perspective. This evening's meeting is on the criminal activity at the Hillside Motel, the Dexter Underpass, the East Queen Anne Greenbelt, and beyond. Before we start, though, a few admin items on the broader Queen Anne Community Council front. We have our next board meeting is on Wednesday, the 1st of September. And then we have board elections on the 22nd of September. Both of these more information can be found at qacc.net. if you like to do that. Also, this information will also be in our new outstanding newsletter. I'd just like to give a shout out to our newsletter, which has hit the ground running with the help of people like Paula, but then also Josh Daniels and others. So thank you for that. One of the items that will be in the next newsletter that is from a public safety perspective is the upcoming Double Trouble exercise. And this is where Seattle's Emergency Communications Hub support their communities after a large disaster earthquake. So there's going to be two exercises, Saturday the 18th of September and the 25th. And for more information on this, please check out the newsletter, or you can just search Seattle Emergency Hubs and you can find it as well. So that is for the exercises on the 18th and the 25th. Again, very important in the case of natural disaster and the like. Also, the newsletter itself, please look out for the newsletter. Lots of information there. For the meeting itself, please remain muted, both video and audio, except for the panelists that we have, plus and myself. If you have any questions, please submit those via chat. We like to keep the chat channel open for questions, which we'll ask after an initial set of questions. And what's going to happen, Josh Daniel, fellow board member, will go through those questions, and then those questions will be brought up and asked to our three panelists. And I think, well, for those who were already on earlier, you heard the little announcement. Tonight's meeting is being recorded, so it can be posted and viewed later as well. So just FYI on that front in terms of it being recorded. One last note from from a public safety perspective, the committee has been pushing graffiti reports as well. This is my notes. Please Find It, Fix It on your phone and go around and report graffiti as you see it all over Queen Anne. I've had great success tackling graffiti on traffic signs, less success on things like post boxes, mailboxes, but great response on traffic signs. So, please go ahead and take a picture, submit it. You can do it within a minute, and that'd be great for our community. So with all that behind, again, tonight's meeting is going to be on the criminal activity that we're seeing on Aurora, just south of the Aurora Bridge at the Hillside Motel, then farther south to the Dexter Underpass, above and below with the green belts, particularly above, and in the neighborhoods. And so this is something that has been bubbling along for a while, but it's gone to the next level. And we've had some opportunities that have come up to really address this issue, but hasn't quite gotten to the point we need to be. So what we're looking to do this evening is go through the issues that exist at this location. And we have three panelists to speak to it. We have Christopher Goodwin from Christopher Goodwin Motorsport, which is located just south of that location. Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle, a group that's been doing great work in our parks and other green spaces. And also Paula Mueller, among many things, she chairs the Queen Anne Block Watch Network and also Queen Anne Together, two very important organizations here on Queen Anne. So I'd like to start with Christopher Goodwin, to quick introduction, your background as applies to this and in organization business, and then the same thing for Andrea and then Paula. Chris?
Yeah, hi. So I leased this building 1 year ago, directly next to the Dexter Underpass on Aurora. The upper floor of the building has been converted into 5 artist studio spaces, and the downstairs I use for the restoration of classic cars. And my office looks out on the staircase at the bus stop at the Dexter Underpass. And I deal with these people every single day because they frequent my parking lot and the area surrounding my business.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. Andrea?
Hi, my name is Andrea Suarez. I'm the founder, executive director of a volunteer-led coalition of litter pickers that has gotten bigger and bolder over the months, and recently tackled the mammoth debris removal of the Northeast Queen Anne Greenbelt by request of the neighbors here, and just using social media to connect various stakeholders of the area, and I hopefully restored it. I think it was about over 40,000 pounds of trash was hauled out by volunteers using barbecue tongs and litter pinchers, and somewhere north of 5,000 needles and other paraphernalia and whatnot. So that's our recent accomplishment, but year to date, we've removed over 250,000 pounds of trash out of city parks, including Miller, Carkeek, Dr. Jose Rizal, Miller, Denny, Bell, as well as bike trails, which also included some tremendous outreach work where we've been able to get over 50 people connected to services and off the street. So it's been a really great journey, and we're only 11 months in. So thank you for inviting me here today.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And now Paula.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Paula Mueller. I chair the Queen Anne Block Captains Network, and also co-chair Queen Anne Together, which is a Business Watch organization that we started just this last year. So we have joined forces with the residents and the businesses to try to deal with the growing and rampant crime issues in Queen Anne. I'm also a Queen Anne resident, and live not too darn far from the Hillside Motel and the on-ramp onto Aurora. So I'm well familiar with all the crime activity. And thanks very much.
Okay, great for all three of you to be joining us this evening. And I know I can see folks are still joining us in, and also looking to get into the meeting, and we'll work those issues as they come up. But we'd like to start right now. For Chris, we'll start with you. We'll keep the same sequence, Chris, Andrea, then Paula. Can you describe what you've observed and learned from, what you've seen, and then also your discussions with individuals at the location at the Hillside and Dexter Underpass?
Sure. So the Hillside Motel was essentially abandoned about a year ago. The people living there or staying there, I'm not actually sure anyone lives there. It seems to be more a place to do business than a place to live. They are engaged in the sale of drugs and prostitution and the brokering of stolen items 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So I've been here for a year, and I've seen, we average about 3 overdoses a week on the Dexter Underpass stairs. I typically pick up between 20 and 30 needles a day there, human excrement, urine, you name it. It's all going on here. People typically show up here throughout the day, starting at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it goes all night till about 4 in the morning. They come to the bus stop and the stairs, they make a phone call. A runner either comes down from the Hillside Motel, or someone who is capable of buying there goes up to the Hillside Motel, comes back, and they do their drugs at the bus stop and on the stairs.
Should we launch your pictures?
Sure.
Okay, Paula.
Yeah.
I understand, Chris, we have some photos from you to basically tell the story from a
Sure.
visual perspective. And Chris, I understand you're here on your phone, so if you can't see, I think Paula can also may speak to the pictures.
Sorry, it's just
I think I'll probably recognize them.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So that's one of our local guys selling drugs to two people that have come to purchase drugs. They come pretty much daily. The guy with the baseball hat is here all the time, either sleeping behind my building or shooting drugs in his neck. That was a couple this weekend that showed up to have a little picnic. They met a dealer at the stairs, then purchased what they call blues, which are supposed to be Percocet, but everybody knows they're actually fentanyl. You take the pill, place it on a piece of tinfoil, heat it with a lighter, and suck the smoke up with a straw. So I walked out and leaned over the railing and took pictures of them, which they didn't care about. That's about 12:30 at night, probably 8 to 10 people, a lot of younger people in their 20s, all there buying from a runner that came down from the Hillside Motel. Then they hung out for about an hour doing drugs and eventually wandered off or caught the bus. That's typical afternoon. That's again, that same picture that we had a close up earlier of the chunky guy. I just call him the fat guy. He's one of the few that isn't emaciated, who comes every day and does drugs at the bus stop. That's a local lady that we have who overdosed here 3 times in 1 week. That's her sleeping with her head in a box of pastries. That was Saturday, I believe. The gentleman is a resident of the Aloha Inn down the street and a rampant alcoholic in our area. She was unconscious and unresponsive. It took me about 5 minutes to get a response out of her to make sure she didn't need medical attention. I've actually called 911 for her, I think 4 times, 3 times in 1 week and 1 other time. That's a picture of the stairs with a office chair. Not sure why. That's about 10:30 at night. It's a bunch of different people. 4 of those people are residents of the Aloha Inn down the road. The kid with the baseball hat is a runner that goes back and forth to the Aloha Inn and supplies drugs. They are smoking fentanyl off tinfoil. That's a sign that was at the bus stop surrounded by syringes where somebody felt it necessary.
Sorry.
Somebody felt it necessary to state that they wouldn't trade sex for money or drugs, because that's how often it happens here. Usually there's at least 3 or 4 condoms a morning laying on those stairs. So at least they're using condoms. That's typical afternoon. That's most days if it's not raining. And you probably see 8 people sitting on the stairs. Some of them are injecting heroin. Some of them are smoking fentanyl. Some of them are smoking meth out of glass pipes. That's a local from the Aloha Inn and his girlfriend. He's hitting a meth pipe right there. Goes by the name Bubba. That's another typical afternoon when it's nice out. You've got a whole bunch of people, including somebody in a wheelchair, who are all there waiting for a runner to come down from the hillside. Or I think that's after the runner's already come down. And they're all distributing whatever it is they've gotten, and they'll mostly do it there on the stairs. That's one of my daily pickups on those stairs. So that there is someone's fentanyl smoking kit. They've got a couple of different little straws there, a glass pipe, and a piece of tinfoil and an old makeup compact. That's one day's pickup of syringes off the stairs. There's about 20 there. That's human excrement on the top of a Tupperware lid with a sign from somebody saying that they are homeless and hungry. And that was all piled up at the bottom of the stairs. That somebody actually stuffed under the door of my business. And that's pretty self-explanatory. That's typical everyday needles on the stairs. That one's full of blood where somebody's shot up and then sucked it back full of blood and shot up again and done that several times to make sure they've gotten everything out of the syringe and then dropped it full of human blood. That's somebody that thought it was a good idea to cook up heroin with a fork is the only thing I can think of. I took that picture shortly after they picked up an overdose dead guy at the bottom of the stairs. That's tinfoil from smoking fentanyl pills. They put the pill on a piece of tinfoil, heat it with a lighter, and the pill slowly slides around the tinfoil, creating smoke. That's a bunch of diaper wipes covered in blood, where somebody was obviously shooting up on the stairs and then decided to clean their bleeding wounds with diaper wipes and left them decorating the sides of the stairs on my property. That's a mattress from the McLean Park that Andrea Suarez and I found next to a tent in one of the abandoned encampments. That's a crack pipe, the illustration, or excuse me, a meth pipe.
Chris, when I'm looking at these photos, you mentioned, some young people in the photos. Obviously, you said that one young person was a runner between Hillside and the underpass. My understanding is that there's been some other young adults frequently.
Every day people come down the trail behind my business from Queen Anne. They come down and cop drugs from the people at the bus stop. They do the drugs there or are shown how to do the drugs there. Kids get off the bus. I mean, kids, teenagers, my daughter's age, get off the bus and hang out there asking where they can buy drugs. They buy drugs and are then shown how to use them by the people at the stairs every day.
You mentioned the bus of the young people from like the whole from the Queen Anne community. Is there, you feel like it's like 50-50 compared to those that may come in from elsewhere on the bus, or your sense of?
I would have to guess where it is that they live, but the ones that come down the trail behind my business are clearly coming down from residences on Queen Anne, and they probably make up 30% of the young people I see there.
Wow, that's incredible to hear, particularly when you mention that they're also being taught how, I guess, lack of a better word, best use it, in order to get the greatest high from the drug.
Yeah, and I don't think most people realize that you smoke a pill off tinfoil, so they need some instruction. And shooting up probably your first time is pretty scary, so they need some instruction.
Shall we move on to the educational videos?
Okay.
Can you see them?
Yes, I can see the photos.
Yep.
I can see the video. Go ahead.
Okay.
So that's a guy that I see around here pretty frequently. He is, like so many of them, digging on the ground for whatever somebody else has left. Right there, he's smoking what he thinks is a pill, may or may not be, off a piece of tinfoil. That day he was here pretty much all day with no shirt on, tweaking on drugs and digging around in the dirt trying to find something. That's a really common thing that you see them do all the time. They'll put a coat or a shirt over their head so that their lighter doesn't get blown out. And you'll see people sitting at the bus stop and on the stairs, 5 or 6 at a time with coats over their heads. So they're typically smoking either meth in a glass pipe or they're smoking fentanyl on tinfoil. That's the fat guy again. Right there, he's holding up his cell phone and he's using his selfie camera to direct him while he's sticking a syringe into his jugular vein. So that's another really common behavior that you see. After you've developed so much scar tissue on your arms that you can't hit a vein without it rolling, they start going for feet, back of the hand, eventually the neck. So he's shooting heroin in his neck at the bus stop where there are people waiting to take the bus. Now that's a guy who I call Mr. Magoo. He's carrying a piece of surgical tubing for smoking fentanyl right there. They use surgical tubing so that they can cool the hit before they take it. Right there, he's meeting Mr. Techie with a bicycle, and the guy will dig in his pocket, get out a bunch of money, put it on the edge there. Mr. Magoo takes it and goes up the street and buys him drugs. And that's something you see all the time. This particular video is interesting because you can actually see him handing him money. So after he gets the money, he walks off, and then Mr. Techie thinks twice about it and follows him at a distance, I assume so that he wouldn't run off with his money. But Mr. Magoo's here every day. This is another guy who's a regular here. He comes here, he actually buys drugs himself at the Hillside. Then he comes here and does them while he's waiting for the bus. So he's fitting up a syringe right now, getting ready to inject it, but all of his veins are hammered, so he can't actually hit a vein. That kid standing next to him is about, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. And he was just there smoking pot. That video is taken from the doorway of my shop. So I was standing in my shop taking that video. And I know he was smoking pot because I could smell it. So you can see him there trying to get a vein. Incidentally, I pour bleach down those stairs about once a week because the stench of urine is so severe that I can smell it in my business. This is a lady that showed up last week, and she's trying to pick up drugs that she's dropped on the ground. That's a typical afternoon at about 3:30. There are people, I don't know why they do this, but they get off the bus from downtown across Aurora, and then rather than using the urine-filled underpass, they play Frogger and run across all 6 lanes of rush hour traffic. I moved the camera over to the stairs because there were 2 people smoking pills on the stairs, but I couldn't actually see them when I moved the camera there. That guy right there looks like Flavor Fave on the left. He's here 3-4 times a day. Comes from downtown, goes up to the Hillside, buys drugs, brings them down, sells some of them to people at the bus stop. The other ones he takes and gets on the bus and goes downtown with them. That girl, about 15 minutes after this video was taken, had some kind of a seizure while smoking pills on the stairs, and I had to call 911 to come get her. She was unconscious and twitching with 3 other people just sitting by her, paying no mind to it whatsoever. This guy showed up and was shooting heroin behind my business. So I went back and told him that he couldn't do it there because I didn't want to have to deal with it if he overdosed. He responded to that by shooting heroin, smoking something, I didn't see what it was, and then taking off his clothes and masturbating for 1 hour and 10 minutes. A lot of stamina. It took the police 1 hour and 20 minutes to arrive. They arrived about 10 minutes after he'd left. That day I had my 9-year-old here doing homework and had to call her mother to come pick her up because I didn't want her to see any of this going on out the window. That's Fatso again, standing there with a backpack. You can see that he's so high that his knees are buckling. Typically, you'll see them once they get high on heroin, they can't stand up straight, and about every second or so, their knees buckle, but somehow they remain upright. I was actually filming him because I was convinced he was going to fall down the stairs. But he's up there distributing at the top of the stairs after using. The other people are teenage kids from the area.
Chris, how many times per week do you think on average are you calling for medical calls to 911 that you're looking to help these individuals?
2 or 3 times a week.
And over
2 or
the
3
last
times a week.
number
I
of
probably
months,
call
how many deaths-
911 5 or 6 times a week.
And how many deaths? I understand the manager at the Hillside Motel, but in addition to him, there's been how many?
How many deaths here?
Yes, in terms of ODs, yes.
I've seen them take away probably 4 people in the past 3 months dead. There were a lot of other ones who were dead when the medics arrived. And after they inject Narcan in their neck and shock them, a lot of them come back. A lot of them then refuse service.
Wow.
There was a picture I thought Paula had of one of them. Maybe it was too unpleasant to show, but That was a guy that was dead who they brought back and tried to refuse service until he realized that his ribs were broken from CPR.
Incredible, an incredible testimony. Thank you, Chris. And
Yeah.
we'll come back to you. But
All those photos there are taken during the past month.
Understand. And I should point out too that photos have been, and information has been passed to SPD on all of these, right?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Okay, Andrea, sorry for that delay, but that was an incredible testimony. Now, I'd like to understand and what a great effort that was undertaking in the Greenbelt. Can you walk through the experience of the East Queen Anne Greenbelt?
Sure. So our movement has been to respond to really community requests in areas that are no longer enjoyable for all to use. It's Northeast Greenbelt. It connects two very historical trails, the Trolley Hill Trail and Pea Patch, and the McLean Trail, which are a historic, landmark donated by, families to the city over the course of years, and nature conservatories meant to encourage wildlife and native species to grow. And it's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful trail until it wasn't. And I had never seen anything like it in my life. But since I had been hands-on in the last year, really still nothing in the city was as destroyed as the Northeast Queen Anne Greenbelt, which connected, that Northeast Taylor Ave to the E line. And so it was actually also not only is it touted in guidebooks that tourists use as the number one of the top 10 urban hikes, but it's also on an active GPS city transit route, which surprised me that, if we can't figure out what to do with the crime and the garbage and the abandoned needles, put some, I just found it shocking that it would be an open transit line. And during our litter picks, they're found mostly single women coming through the trail by themselves on their phone, wondering what planet they were on, stepping over the needles, the excrement, sex paraphernalia, wild, prostitution costumes, toilets, makeshift toilets throughout the trail, thousands upon thousands and thousands, 40, 50 plus thousand pounds of abandoned debris that included, again, north of 5,000 used needles on the trail, not off the trail, not out of, in your peripheral, but literally on the Greenbelt Trail was blocked by garbage that posed an extraordinary environmental hazard, a personal safety hazard for people walking through with pets or dogs.
Several tripwires were there.
That we ran into tripwires. One woman who was up there, we met, was like, hey, don't look my pit bull in the eyes. My pit bull's, vicious. So, these type of unpredictable scenarios there, yet it was an open, active trail, again, touted on guidebooks. It was something you could find on, TripAdvisor. And it was, I think, most used for people just, passing by using GPS to walk to that bus line alone. And not at all saying, people who are experiencing homelessness or using drugs, are dangerous to a passerby, but it was, and from my perspective, it was just the amount of hazardous waste and garbage. And again, the tripwires, the needles. My mother had come through and helped us litter pick in called me from Oregon after she drove home after volunteering for 4 hours and showed me a Narcan needle that punctured through her tennis shoe. So, and they're there by the thousands. So we got a call. We had our first litter pick there on July 4th on a holiday. We probably had about 25 volunteers showed up, and we identified what was like one of about 15 abandoned scatters. And again, there was no, structures. There wasn't a lot of tents where there was no sign of food, no recent barbecue pits. I mean, these were truly abandoned camps. And we had no problem, bagging it up and getting these areas restored. I saw and witnessed people coming up from the 99 with loaded syringes, looking for a place to shoot and nod off in this public space. That mattress that Christopher showed you would just probably be a place people would sit, shoot, and nod off. There was not, I would say there was only one scenario where people were truly living there, as their residents, as a down and out homeless person. And the two people that were that accepted housing immediately from us, and we got them moved out within just a few days of encountering them. The other activity was truly just a revolving door of this like compound that had been abandoned by somebody who had passed away. And it was just being kind of occupied by whoever wanted to use it on any given day. I'll just add before we get into photos, there was a woman there who I encountered, very friendly towards me, who just said, look, I live at the Aloha Inn. This is where I come to hang out. And I'm like, I have no problem people coming up and enjoying the park, but not on 5,000 pounds of trash that are accumulating. I mean, the pictures that Chris is showing you and some of what you'll see here is it's nothing short of the most inhumane way to allow people to live in our city and our city parks. It's a crisis. It's sad. It's dangerous for everybody to coexist, and we need to get people help. And that's just my point of view on the crisis. But I can roll through some photos here.
Can you see, I'm sorry, Andrea, can you see the videos now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll start this one and then move through as you tell me.
So this is in the basin, what they call the Basin Conservatory. You could see this scatter from the highway for, I don't even know how many years or months it was there, but this was on our list to pick. It was probably way over our head to do. I mean, it just looked like, where are we at? This is Seattle, Washington, in a conservatory greenbelt in the Emerald City. This was years of accumulation. In this case, the city did come in the day before we had a scheduled event and brought in probably, I don't know, $5 million worth of gear, if not more, brought in the full complement, backhoes, bulldozers, garbage trucks, and staff. So I was happy to see that maybe some pressure from the community that this particular large scatter was handled by the city.
Can I ask a quick question on that? My understanding when that happened, that was the surprise to everybody. Was there any coordination? Do you do any coordination with the Parks Department or any other city organization or office? Was that a total surprise? They heard about your impending pick and then they just wanted to beat you to it, or was it totally random? How would you characterize that city cleanup or pickup before I Heart Seattle came in?
It was coincidental timing. I have no idea. We don't collaborate with them. They don't collaborate with us. We have a very active public apolitical Facebook page, which has many government stakeholders on it, the press. So I have a feeling they probably had this one planned. I mean, to pull out that amount of equipment and that amount of staff, a week ahead of when we had that scheduled, but it doesn't matter if we influenced it in some way, shape, or form. Then we're doing good work.
That is good, and I'm interested in that connection to the city governments, because it's almost like, we have notice to airmen, notice to mariners. It's almost like we need a notice to hikers from the city, because obviously, particularly before your team got in there, they should not have been hiking through that location. And it's
Right.
funny how we
More
do
of
notice the
the-
mariners and notice the airmen, but we do not do anything in terms of having a notice to hikers.
Right, I mean, there should just be like a danger, do not enter sign on either end of that to deter people from going down what it did look like. Now it's clean and so it's great to have people come down, but those are little things that could be easily done to, I mean, there was a woman that was hiking through Carkeek Park, and got assaulted. And I mean, people are getting assaulted in plain daylight planting tulips in this city. So don't get me started. But
Well, back to the pictures. I started to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to hit
so
that point.
11 months ago, the only thing I wanted to do was adopt a street program. I wanted to use the Find It, Fix It app. I wanted to promote all of these wonderful available city services. And because of COVID, Adopt a Street was shut down and still is very much like the Seattle Parks and Recs collaborative litter picks. I think they did one out in Alki a few months ago, and they would only allow 5 people to join. And I get it, it's the pandemic, we need to be careful. We're outside, we're wearing masks, we're 6 feet apart, most of our, we're vaccinated, but we've always been very careful. But we also believe this, and this is very important: waste management is an essential service, and nobody was doing it in our parks and in and around encampments, or what I will call encampment artifacts. And McLean Trail really was an example of an artifact, encampment artifacts that we were cleaning up. It was 15 different once established camps, layers. I mean, we were excavating, several feet of trash that accumulated from what seemed like years. Digging and thinking we had all the needles, and then walking back through, and then there were more needles because the soil had settled. There's still more in there. Be careful, but the trail itself, we feel, at least has been restored. So what we find our key to success is, and to collaborate with the city as a volunteer, we might be able to get something on the books in 90 days. And we feel this is a state of emergency for all, for our unhoused and for housed. This is an extraordinary amount of garbage throughout our city in our public shared spaces. And every case I have done these litter picks are unhoused. Thank us. Thank you. Thank you for cleaning this up. We couldn't do it on our own. A lot of it's illegal dumping. A lot of it's their own garbage. A lot of it's too many donations that come, et cetera. There's multiple reasons why this garbage does accumulate. And I've never had a homeless person say, get out of my space, you're not welcome. It's always 100% been welcomed. Even with somebody with a needle in their neck, they're sad, they're ashamed, it's a horrible disease and addiction. And when volunteers come out, the magic in this is that civic engagement is it's the community coming out and caring and no longer allowing people to live this way, because the city has their own reasons why they can't. I won't get into politics or liability, but volunteers are unhoused, are like, thank you for coming out. Our presence is saving their lives. And Christopher is saving lives, calling 911, whether people like it or not, whether the police are showing up or not. It is the only option we have to wake somebody up that may otherwise overdose and die.
While we're seeing this video, Andrea, can you speak to, I've had multiple emails with, the lieutenant in charge of arson for SPD, also the fire investigation unit, the captain at the fire department responsible for the fire investigation unit within SFD. Can you speak to the fires? There's one picture there that showed a lot of garbage on fire. Can you speak to that issue?
Yeah. Nothing had, again, about 11, we started this on July 4th. This was our July 4th bags that we had staged almost all the way up. And we thought, well, parks will come down, they'll figure it out. They'll come down into the trail and get these bags soon enough. We use the Find It, Fix It app. I have direct emails and phone numbers for the parks team, who sometimes will respond, but I know they get the message, there's X amount of pounds ready for pickup. In the case of McLean Park, they were far more delayed in responding to picking up our trash. They've been busy. There's a lot of activity going on downtown. And because we don't plan ahead with them and just do it, and so oftentimes we'll even haul our own garbage away, by the way. But there were a total of 4 arsons over our 6 to 7 litter picks that we did over the whole summer. And we don't know who, we don't know if it was protesters or somebody on an unstable retaliation, or maybe even somebody retaliating against the city for not showing up. I mean, it's not me, I don't know, nobody knows. But the bags were caught on fire here at the center of the trail. And then on one of our last picks, we hauled down another, 7,000 pounds of trash. That too got set on fire on 99. Very, I'm disappointed that after the first arson that could have taken out that entire greenbelt and possibly caught your neighborhood on fire during the biggest drought in history, that when the city saw that we were working down there, that would have responded a little quicker, that not only did we have all of this garbage, but that people were starting to catch it on fire. And there was, and I mean, I am disappointed in the response time. I mean, there's private contractors that could have come out and got it. You could have called 1-800 junk guy. It did sit long.
A concern for me too on the fire piece, and I've mentioned this to numerous individuals within SFD and SPD, that as a veteran, first thing comes to mind is the burn pits, because we don't have any photos, but there are photos out there with the smoke plumes coming up, and I can just imagine with human waste, medical waste, and all the like being caught up in those fires and up in those plumes, those smoke plumes. That cannot be good for anybody downwind of that. I guess one fortunate thing is the greenbelt being so large, by the time the plume got to another location, maybe it was dispersed to a greater degree. But that is something that really caught my attention. And that was a point that I made too, that, hey, these fires are not just regular wood fires. These fires are burning, waste that is medical waste, whole host of things that is toxins in the smoke that goes above.
Yeah, well,
I can speak to that for just a moment. During that same week that there was that fire, there were 8 fires up along Aurora and 3 behind my building. And I actually videotaped one of the guys who was lighting fires, and I could get no one from the police department or fire department interested in looking at the video. So I sent it to everybody. I published it to YouTube. So we had a guy who was doing meth, who was running around lighting fires, stacking up magazines at the base of trees. He lit the guardrail on fire at the Dexter overpass. He would pile up wood at the base of trees and light it on fire. He lit a fire right on Aurora, broad daylight, middle of the day. So
Incredible.
There's that.
Well,
yeah.
thank you, Andrew, for that. That again, testimony of what was there, but more importantly, what incredible effort to pick up and bag up, and then eventually was hauled away from McLean Park and the trails that connect it up and down from 99. So thank you, and thank your organization and other organizations and individuals that helped you out. That's an unbelievable effort, and it really should be recognized. It should be recognized by the city, the mayor. Next time I talk to her, I'll make that recommendation. Now I'd like to turn it over to Paula for her to discuss basically the broader impacts beyond the immediate location of the hillside, the Dexter underpass, and the Greenbelt. Paula?
Sure, thanks. So I don't have pictures, but Andrew and Chris have done a great job of really showing the reality of what is going on along Aurora and in the Greenbelt. This has been a major concern of mine for years. And as Bob will attest, every time I have a chance, I hand somebody something about the sad state of the East Queen Anne Greenbelt. So thank you, Andrea, for leading the charge on getting it cleaned up. And thanks, Chris, for being sort of our boots on the ground there. So anybody who lives in Queen Anne, and especially on the east side of the Queen Anne, is well aware of what is happening in our neighborhood as a result of the crime activity that emanates from the Hillside Motel and there along Aurora. So having Chris in the middle of the action, while not necessarily a great thing for him, it has given us a frontline perspective that we haven't had before. Also, since the eightplex adjacent to the Hillside burned and was basically abandoned a couple years ago, and then the property was just left to the drug dealers, the problems have become notably worse, and they're impacting more people in the community to a greater extent. So all of this at the same time that the city really has shown little interest in taking any kind of legal action against those who are openly dealing drugs or engaging in prostitution at the Hillside, or taking action against the now former owner of the Hillside who allowed this to sort of foster. So we as residents and business owners have been left really to deal not only with having an active drug trade in our neighborhood, which is never a good thing, but we're left to be the victims of ever-present and growing crimes that result from people stealing to support their addictions and to get other items they want but have no way to pay for, or crimes that just make our community unsafe and unpleasant. So we don't dare leave our cars unlocked because they absolutely will be prowled, and anything that's in there that we think has any value will be stolen. Personal papers will be stolen, so your personal information is out there. We have no expectation that packages left on our porches or in front of our businesses will be there when we go to get them. Locked sheds and garages are subject to regular and repeated break-ins. And basically, we kind of have to chain up everything that can be moved. Bicycles, strollers, barbecue grills, propane canisters of all things, potted plants, mini libraries, and anything that can be carried away because it will be. Our homes and businesses are no longer safe, even if every door and window is locked. With no deterrent to break-ins, attempts occur more frequently and repeatedly, even while residents are home. And in fact, just a few blocks from me, last week, there were 3 homes that had attempted break-ins in one night while the residents were there. Probably most of you heard about the break-in at Five Corners Hardware several months ago that tripped their alarm. Neighbors actually called the police at the moment that the alarm went off. It took 45 minutes for there to be a police response. And during that time, the thieves finally figured out that nothing was going to happen. So they were quite comfortable making several trips in and out of the store to load up their truck with whatever they wanted and made off with the goods before police showed up. We can't really walk the streets of the neighborhood without sort of having to be a little hyper alert about the potential to encounter someone who's either high on drugs, in need of a fix, or suffering from a mental health or addiction crisis. And we're nearly always on our own when we encounter these people. These individuals confront and threaten residents, business owners, the customers of the business owners, most often with no intervention at all. There have been numerous instances in which people, usually women or young girls, have been followed to their homes, screamed at, threatened with physical harm and by somebody in a state of crisis. And in one instance, a young woman was followed from her place of work. She took refuge in a nearby store where the store owners actually said that they had a restraining order against the man who was following her and threatening her. She waited and thought that he had gone away, but sadly he was hiding around the corner. So he continued to follow her then home, again, threatening to do harm to her. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that man was arrested. So oftentimes, these are the kinds of incidents where people know that the next time they're out and about, they may well run into these confrontations again. Walking to school can be a risky business now that school is apparently going to be starting back in person. The Hillside Motel is just a few blocks from Seattle Country Day School, which is a K-8 institution. There are lots of kids that walk to and from that school, and there are lots of kids that walk from that area to and from other schools. So it's one thing when an adult has an encounter with someone who is having an addiction crisis or maybe is high and not behaving properly. It's an entirely different thing when it's a kid. The residents who live immediately at the 7-way intersection near Seattle Country Day, and just as you get onto Aurora, have complained frequently of people who park in the neighborhood there, walk down the stairs to the hillside, return to their cars with the drugs that they've purchased, turn up the radios, shoot up, smoke the drugs, and pass out right in front of their homes, and sometimes even in front of their driveways. And of course, nobody is really comfortable confronting these individuals. So those residents pretty much are just left to endure the disturbance and the disruption. Even a good night's sleep is difficult to come by because there is a regular nightly array of M80s and other kind of explosive devices that are set off at the hillside. I hear them from my house. I actually thought they were closer to me because of the sound. And when I learned they were coming from the hillside, I could not even imagine what it's like for people who live right above the hillside or across the highway from it. It clearly must be very disturbing for not only people, but pets who are there. But there's no response to complaints and no abatement of that intrusion. Everybody knows that our parks, playgrounds, and green belts are no longer safe or clean. Parents have to do visual sweeps for needles before they can let their kids run around in the parks. And it's not unusual to find human feces, not only in the parks, but just on the sidewalks. And even a trip to the grocery store is an interesting experience. So oftentimes you're looking for things that have been removed from the shelves because they've been stolen frequently. And while we wait in line to pay for the groceries, there are people who simply come in, load up their bags or backpacks, and walk out without paying and without any fear of being intercepted. So I'm sure that you share some of my extraordinary frustration with the situation. And there are a lot of reasons that we are where we are. Too few police officers, lax policies on crime deterrence and enforcement, a lack of strong alternative programs for those with addiction and behavioral health issues, misguided policies aimed at being less punitive, but which end up simply enabling addiction and crime, and a belief that residents really aren't all that upset about the current situation. So, and none of these policies and practices are really making life better for either those that they're intended to help or those of us who have become the victims of the failure of these policies. So the bottom line is the message is kind of loud and clear. The city's not actively pursuing drug dealers unless they're really involved in a major trafficking scheme. They're certainly not pursuing drug users, and preventing these people from being incarcerated has become more important than protecting the rights of the rest of the citizens of Seattle and Queen Anne. Deterring property crime isn't important. So those who steal to support their drug habits do so without any fear of being arrested, jailed, or tried. Our rights as law-abiding, tax-paying residents and business owners are no longer a priority, and we're expected to simply live with the consequences. So in short, we're kind of left largely on our own without access to the resources that really are a fundamental function of city services. And if we want to take these services back, we have to continue to be really vocal, to work together and vote for candidates who support our rights on at least an equal basis with the rights of the criminals. So I'm here this evening just to talk about creating a loud and persistent message, along with Bob and Chris and Andrea and everyone else, about the drug sales, drug use, and the related crimes that emanate from the hillside. And we're hoping that everybody who's joined us will give voice to the initiative and support our efforts in that vein. Even the current property owners, Inland Capital, are in support of what we're doing and are working hard themselves to resolve the issue. So my call to action to everybody who's here is 4 things. Report any and all crimes so that we get the numbers that are reflected to SPD about what's really going on, no matter how frustrating it is, with the realization that it's highly likely not to produce a police presence. copy me on those reports for two reasons. Bob and I will make sure that these stay front and center with SPD and the city attorney's office, as well as the mayor's office, the city council, and anybody else that we can get to listen to us. And we'll make sure that Inland Capital's council has this information for their potential use, should that be needed in their efforts to get the building vacated so that it can be sold and developed into a productive, positive property. Stay connected with this group so that we can build on the momentum, and we'll provide updates on as the matter progresses, and we'll continue to give our voice to this issue with our existing officials and the newly elected ones that may coming up. Finally, if you don't have a neighborhood watch, start one and watch out for each other. So we are in this together, but we are in it ourselves. So we have to be front and center to do our best thing to prevent these crimes from hurting ourselves and our neighbors. And that's all I have.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And I'd like to have Josh come up. And as Josh comes up, and some questions may have been answered within the chat, but if you come up, and as you come up, I'd just like to add one additional point. As you know from listening to the conversations and the like, there has been an incredible amount of communication with the police department, fire department, other parts of the city government, to include the city attorney's office. And one thing that we were looking at was the chronic nuisance property ordinance that was written with the city council, Tim Burgess and the like, that that played off the state chronic property nuisance. But unfortunately, we got to a point where the city will not do anything. Pete Holmes, city attorney Pete Holmes, he used it a few times, but then he was challenged on one time that he looked to do it regarding the constitutionality of it. And for whatever reason, Pete did not stand up to that, and has since will not push anything in terms of the city attorney's office with respect to chronic property nuisance. And that's really unfortunate. It's somewhat become overcome by events with the transfer of ownership from the owner who skipped town after he received his insurance payment when the fire took out the main structure there at the hillside. And now the new owners have only been there a very short period of time, Inland Capital. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's one thing that's been a challenge and a frustration, is the chronic nuisance property ordinance. And so Josh, questions that you see within the chat?
Yeah.
We're 8 o'clock, but we can go over a little bit in terms of our time.
You bet. So one theme that is definitely common among a number of questions is about Andrew Lewis, our council member. Several people asked, is he on the call, or the rep from Inland Bank, who are the current owners of the hillside? And then, Charlotte asked, I would like to understand Andrew Lewis's stance on all of this. So several questions about communications with Andrew Lewis and his office and the bank.
Well, I'll let Paul speak to the bank, but before that, I will say that Andrew Lewis's office was notified of this, and to include 3 staffers of his was notified of this meeting. The staff chose not to respond. These are individuals that I've had over the years, numerous year plus, numerous email exchanges. So I'm well known to Andrew and the 3 staffers that included on that the invitation to him. And unfortunately, he was scheduled to be at last week's farmers market, but he did not show up. I was going to personally invite him to join us for this call and to discuss some other issues. He will be on Queen Anne, top of the hill, tomorrow at the Queen Anne Baptist Church, where he's going to be participating in a meeting there, and about 5:30 over at the Queen Anne Baptist Church, but he chose not to join us this evening. And Paula for the Inland Capital.
Yeah, and I can add, Andrew is definitely aware of the situation, because literally when Bob has arranged the walkabouts with Chief Diaz, West Precinct Captain Allen and Andrew Lewis, I had my handy little packet about the Greenbelt and the crime on Aurora that I gave to each of them. Because like I said, that's been really sort of a touch point of mine for some time. So yeah, just a quick update from Inland Capital. So they're actually quite happy with the fact that we are engaged. And we're very happy when Bob contacted them. So the property is for sale. There are actually 2 parcels. One's the 8-plex that had burned, and one is the motel. They're hoping, of course, to sell those parcels together. They served everyone at the property when they, excuse me, on July 2nd, it went into foreclosure and they actually became the owners. They served everyone with a 20-day notice to vacate on July 13th. Which is required. And then they also served a 60-day notice of intent to sell the property per state requirements. For eviction purposes, they can't start any action until September 13th, which is the expiration of the 60-day notice. People who are there are not currently paying rent, I think Bob said, or somebody did. The property also is not licensed as a motel, hasn't been for some time. Inland Capital is negotiating relocation packages with the current people who are living there. And if there are people who end up not electing to vacate, then Inland Capital is in a position where they have to start legal proceedings through the King County Sheriff's Office. And that's why they're very interested in us reporting to them the incidents of crimes that take place, because that will add to, the obvious fact that these are not people who are homeless just living in this place, that these are people who are there conducting criminal activities. So that's why they have asked us to continue to funnel those reports to them. They wanted them to come from a single source rather than getting bunches of emails from a lot of people. So I offered to sort of be that source. And Bob and I will consolidate those and make sure that they're in front of the other people too. Go ahead, Chris, you had something.
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Josh, go ahead, Josh. Next
Yeah, so
question.
2 related follow-ups have come in during that discussion. One, what's the nature of the Queen Anne Baptist meeting tomorrow? And also, has there been any thought given to forming an LLC and suing the bank?
I can speak to the meeting tomorrow. So the meeting tomorrow is actually originally stood up by Noah Dorson, who some of you might know. Noah is a small business advocate, primarily from a political perspective. He's much more politically active than some of the other organizations. So it is a small group of business owners on Queen Anne who have some of the same concerns, but not necessarily tied to the Hillside Motel in any event. And so it's about, I think it's less than 20 people. We were asked to keep it small. And so that's the gist of it. So I'm there as a representative of Queen Anne Together. And then there are other individual merchants that'll be there. And then Bob's going to be there, I think, too. And I don't know, Chris, if you're going to be there.
I think I will be. Yeah.
And it's an in-person meeting. It's not a Zoom meeting. So it is limited to the number of people prescribed. So. What was the other question?
There was one about, has any thought been given to suing the bank that owns the Hillside?
There's
No.
there's been
Yeah,
some
that's
people
my
say
help.
that, but the relationship, I had a discussion with the CEO and I mean, they are totally in line. So at this point, I think we may be able to help each other. And that's definitely the intent on their side. I mean, they definitely want to partner with us. They're not looking to be adversarial at all. They want to partner with us. We have shared goals with respect to the current state of the property. And as I was told, they want to board every single little hole up and then, get it tight and then having, wraparound fence and all the other security pieces that can go with that. So their goals at this point, I understand that might be a tactic, but at this point, we have shared goals and looking to partner and to support the effort. With our experience, like with Chris's experience, we'll look to share that as well. I had a discussion with Chris about that, and what support that we can give to zip this up, because it should be fairly simple, because the individuals that are there are not homeless, but people engaged in criminal activity. So it's not. This is a very unique situation, and I did not mention this at the beginning, but this is something I've been raising. It's very unique in the sense of the topography, the geography. With the hillside, it's sheltered, particularly in the summertime with the foliage. And then you have a 6-lane highway, as Chris was noting, which really creates a separation from the lower side of the hill towards Westlake. And it's very unique. And that, by the way, goes to the chronic nuisance property issue. It's not like there's homes across the street where somebody can call all the time and say 911, I'm seeing right now what's happening. Is such a secluded piece. And this is where Chris has been so important, so critical to what's happening now, is because he's opened up a view onto the activity that you can't get when you're trying to go 55 miles per hour past the location. And because of that unique topography, and with the buffer of the green belt, that a lot of times if you don't see it, you don't necessarily feel it, except for those individuals and families that live right on the top of the green belt and a little bit beyond. Or even towards Paula's house with the M80s, it's a very difficult situation related to this property. So, but we're definitely looking to do that. And the reminder is to the city, and there will be follow-ups after this call, because this is really a kickoff in terms of publicizing. There's been a lot of work working the issues, but now we really want to really publicize and really get the word out. And I'll just jump to my conclusion points on this, is that we need to reach out. We need everybody on this call to reach out to Andrew Lewis and say, hey, this is not acceptable. Reach out to Jenny Durkin. Reach out to Lorraine Gonzalez as the chair of the city council, to Lisa Herbold as the city council public safety chair, and to Andrew, who has our district, but then also he is a member of the public safety committee, and say, hey, this is not sat. Because their policies or actions taken or not taken by the city are creating this permissive environment from which this criminal activity has just blossomed, and it's become such a problem for our community overall. So anyway, I got a little bit off the track there, Josh. I see one person has got his hand up. If you can put it in the chat. But Josh, is there anything else in terms of questions?
There were a couple about the Aloha, but before we get to those, I thought, Paula, could you just clarify very quickly, when you said send in a complaint, where should people send complaints?
Okay, yeah. So obviously, we want you to report it to SPD. That's very important, and that's the first thing. But then you can, if it's something you write in an email or whatever, you can copy me on it or forward it to me. I put my email address in the chat, Bob's email address, Andrea's organization, and Chris's. After this call, we will send something out to everyone who's on in this meeting or signed up for it. That information, copies of other information that you might want, links to the videos and the pictures and so forth. You'll have my email and you can send them to me.
And Josh, I'll go ahead and answer the Aloha in question. That is a major, that is part of the story, and I've not really spoken to it because I have engaged as part of the team that's working as part of the public safety committee team, and then also with others, to include Chris and others. I've engaged, full disclosure, I'm Catholic and I'm a member of the St. Anne Parish. And so I'm working with other folks that are engaged in this, like me, reaching out to the parish, reaching out to Catholic Community Services, and looking to set up a meeting, which should happen soon once the supervisor, the immediate supervisor of the inn, is back from vacation, and to really make the case in person, and to basically make the ask, the demand that the individuals at the inn are not flowing up north and putting a increased demand signal on the illegal drug market that's occurring at Hillside and the Dexter Underpass. My hope is that meeting, I checked in with Catholic Community Services today on that. hopefully get that as soon as possible. I have spoken to Father Colin Parrish about it more than once. And all these individuals have gotten the full lowdown of what is happening at the Hillside and Dexter Underpass and the Greenbelt, for that matter, in terms of the drugs, but also in terms of prostitution, which has not really been a topic that we discussed this evening. But prostitution is a major issue, to include sex trafficking. And as Chris can note, at least one case involved a minor. So that's another major aspect that we've not really touched on tonight too much. But the prostitution and the sex trafficking is a major issue that we can't have individuals at the inn participating in that. And for those that are asking the questions, I see the chat to quickly follow up that too. I don't want to go too much into this because I've had some updates in terms of what it was, but the inn is not what it was a year and a half ago. Because of COVID, because of the pandemic, they made changes, and now they're looking to make further changes, and that hasn't been released by them yet, and I won't speak to it here, but it'll be part of the discussion and that we have. But again, our major ask, demand, if you will, is to cut that link between the inn and what's happening just to its north.
I've been writing to them about that for months and gotten no response or been met with dismissiveness. And at least 2 of the local prostitutes that work the street in front of my shop live there. And I would say 30 to 40% of the people buying drugs on the stairs in front of my business all live at the Aloha Inn. So
yes, and we'll be discussing that. They know that that we know that all this is going on, and they also know that we've been reporting this to SPD as well. So the SPD has the full laydown in terms of the inn. And I'm calling it the inn because they don't call it the Aloha Inn anymore. They changed the name, and they know that that's been made.
And Catholic Community Services could change their policy in one day, but have chosen not to.
And that's where we're gonna be discussing this. The frustration is we got to step forward. We'd like to have this solved tomorrow. As Chris said, there may be some transition, but the transition does not have to be long and spread out, and things can happen quick.
Well, let us know when they actually manage to meet with you then.
I will, trust me, I will. Again, I've already coordinated it with the parish, Catholic Community Services, and just need the immediate supervisor from the inn to link that in. And I've also
maybe when she returns from vacation, I can take one instead of having my business broken into twice in 2 weeks by residents of the Aloha Inn. So I look forward to my vacation.
Yes, and it will be very well earned vacation as well. I should add too that we're looking to have at this meeting retired judge be the mediator to assist in this, and this is someone who has great experience working with the Archdiocese on other issues that have been affecting the impact in the church, basically to make the community's interests known and concerns known and get a fix.
We probably should go to more questions. I don't want to interrupt and stop the conversation, but
Josh, anything else?
There was one question about whether there's people have thought about going to the Seattle Times. I think it was Scott Greenstone at Project Homeless.
we have. We've actually talked about, so this meeting is sort of the initial community meeting about, raising the alarm, raising the awareness of everybody in the community, elevating the issue. We've elevated it, believe me, with SPD. They probably are sick of hearing from us, but they'll continue to hear from us. And we've been very clear that if we don't see the kind of progress quickly that we expect to see, that this is really important to us. And we're sure that there are many other places in the city having a problem, but this problem has been going on not just for a year or years, but literally decades, perhaps not at the current level, but it's a long-term problem, and that we're done with it. We're tired of it. So the press is next in line. And whether it's someone as legitimate as the Seattle Times or somebody who takes a more aggressive role about it, we're willing to talk with the press.
I would guess that the press is watching this at some point, or some intern is. There's a lot of folks that are likely representing our council and government stakeholders that are on here today. I recognize a few names. So just because maybe Lewis isn't on here, government stakeholders, that their eyes are definitely hearing and listening to everybody. I would just encourage this. We're in a time where our government is just really in gridlock on a lot of issues, and there's just a lot of polarization going on in our community. One of the first things we did almost a year ago with great success was getting a couple buildings demolished. We didn't go, I hammered the city, I hammered, going through the process, having my 15-minute meeting, going through and filing a claim, going through the non-emergency line. And I beat my head against the wall and I said, dang it, I'm just going to start doing it myself. And not in a vigilante, careless, mean, cruel way, but you can work directly with the property owners, the banks. You're on the right track, getting those meetings with Catholic Community Housing, making your presence in the community, doing your neighborhood block watches, doing the litter picks, the garbage eradication. It's just where we're at. And maybe it'll change over time, but right now I would just encourage you, do those negotiations, come out in numbers directly with the property owners, directly with the agencies, the shelter, the bank of the hillside, engaging, all of the other businesses, yes, but making your bodies physically present. Letters and emails and all that is waste, in my opinion. Get out physically and knock on doors, talk to your neighbors, talk to the unhoused, talk to people shooting heroin and seeing how you can help them. That physical, we care, bring awareness that we can be a part of the solution by taking action. It's effective, and I have many success stories by doing that and negotiating, whether it's with a property owner, an individual. It works to some degree. I think it works better than in some of this other, like, let's just keep writing letters to the mayor. It's a data point, still do it, but you're going to need to take physical outward action. Maybe a protest, maybe a picket, maybe there's a lot. I feel like, I'm not a protesting type. I've always said, why am I not putting this, why don't you put the garbage on, Andrew Lewis's doorstep? Maybe he'll show up, it's like, that's not me, but that's just kind of a final thought I had is be active physically and 3-dimensional.
Well, thank you for that, and really appreciate again your points there, but also the incredible work that your organization, I Heart Seattle's done with the Greenbelt. It is unbelievable. As is Paula's work with the Queen Anne Block Watch Network and Queen Anne Together, and a host of other volunteer opportunities that she gets herself into. And finally, I'd like to thank Christopher Goodwin. Some of you know from his posts on Nextdoor. Some of you are just learning about him tonight. But he has been a fantastic public servant in the sense that he has stepped up for our community, and he's relatively new to our community, having moved his business from Capitol Hill, and he deserves an incredible amount of thanks for really giving a view into what is going on, and then not just seeing it, but then also reporting out on it. And that should be something that we all should thank him for, and to include the city as well. And so I see some claps and a few folks that I see, and I really appreciate that. And I want to thank Chris for all his work. And just to conclude, I also would like to say, as Paula mentioned, if there's something that you see, report, call 911. You can make it different ways, which I know can be cumbersome, difficult, but go ahead and keep doing it. Even when it doesn't seem like it's getting any result, please do so. Stay connected. groups like if you're in the business side, Queen Anne Together, if you neighborhood block watch with the network, volunteering, joining I Heart Seattle, and because it's not just us, and hopefully they'll be on the West Green Belt in Kinnear Park in the not too distant future. I just thought I'd throw that in really quick. Supporting organizations like that is so key for the Queen Anne community, but for Seattle overall. And the ask that I'll ask too is that, we've seen the effects of, this creation of a permissive environment, and not understanding that there's a line between supporting and enabling, and that we have enabled essentially dehumanized conditions and circumstances for these individuals, which is horrific. And it's something terrible. And you have gotten a glimpse into this tonight, and you gotten a view in, as I mentioned about what Chris had done. But like Chris, we need to report this out. So my ask for all of you is to reach out to Andrew. Maybe you need to go to Trader Joe's tomorrow night. Go to his office, send emails, reach out to the mayor, to the city council members I mentioned, and others. Be active with those that want those positions, and make your ask known, and your ask for a better community. And also, if you happen to have connections to the media outlets, I've sent numerous emails to KUOW, Seattle Times, and other organizations in the news media world. But some of these folks know who I am, and they know where I'm coming from a certain angle, and so don't be surprised if you hear me on Thursday on Bill Rackey's The Record Show, if he's back up with Mayor Durkin, because I've done that multiple times. But there's obviously people out there that have connections into the media world, and this story needs to be echoed out, and it needs to be in a broad-based manner. It's something that really needs to be captured in a broad way, and not like in the past where certain news organizations may report out, because unfortunately broad parts of the community will kind of put that in a box, if you will. So we need to have a broad, multiple perspectives from the news media reporting on this and highlighting what this is. And ultimately, and I saw a note from Dan Royalty, who's been engaged as a neighbor, specifically with the hillside. This is not a homeless issue. As you noted, as Andrew told, there was a couple people, but as of now, the Greenbelt is clear. The hillside is criminals, individuals involved in criminal activity, and they're there, and that's how this issue regarding the hillside needs to be framed. It needs to be constantly reframed as a criminal activity problem set that we need to address, that ripples out far beyond 99 Aurora Avenue. So with all that, I'd like to thank everyone, particularly our panelists, Chris Goodwin, Andrea Suarez, and Paula Mueller. But then also,
I briefly speak to your last point.
Yes.
So one point that I wanted to make is that there is no attraction to these stairs in this area. There are no services. There are no urban rest stops to come have a shower, pick up your mail. There are no Targets or Fred Meyers to shoplift from. The single attracting factor to this entire area is the Hillside Motel and the drug trade. And why Catholic Community Services would put people supposedly in recovery in an area where there's an active drug trade is reprehensible at best. The encampments here along the Greenbelt have all been drug related. The encampments that I removed from behind my business were all drug related. They were actively selling heroin, crystal methadone, and pills. All of these problems around this area on the side of Queen Anne, the theft of mail, the theft of things from the top of the hill, are all people that are stealing things from this area to bring them here and trade them for drugs at the Hillside Motel. So I think it's important to remember, as you're speaking to the topography of this area, the attraction of people to come here. They come here from Shoreline. They come here from downtown. The reason why people come here is specifically to buy drugs. They're not homeless. It's a place to do business. And the people in the tents around here, I haven't found one person actually living in a tent. I find people using them as drug dens. That's it. The guy behind me had a sign with his rules for using drugs at his tent behind my building. So I felt the need to point that out.
Okay, well, that puts an exclamation mark on the entire meeting. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us. And again, report, 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 and speak out. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Have a good night.
Night.